My apologies. Here we go. I am indeed recording. Awesome. All right. Well, again, welcome everyone and good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us for today's Shift webinar, Happiness from the Inside Out. This webinar is brought to you by Supporting Heroes in Mental Health Foundational Training and the Innocent Justice Foundation. My name is William Moore, and I'm with OJJDP's National Training and Technical Assistance Center, also known as NTTAC. And as your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a few features of Adobe Connect and discuss another few features just to keep in mind during today's webinar. Please note that today's webinar is indeed being recorded. The webinar will be posted on NTTAC's YouTube page where you can view other archived webinars. For the transcript and support materials, please contact the OJJDP NTTAC Help Desk. For those wishing to download a copy of the PowerPoint slides and other important documents, you may do so by locating the handouts pod directly above the chat area. Here you will also find an FAQ for webinar participants that will likely address any technical related questions. Simply click on the name of the file and then click the download button. At the end of today's webinar, you will be provided an opportunity to ask questions to our presenters, and they will address your questions that are posed during today's presentation. Simply type your questions into the chat box as they arise. And for those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a minute to help us count. Go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you're viewing alone, there's no need to type anything into the chat pod at this time. Great. And again, the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you're viewing alone, there's no need to type anything into the chat pod at this time. And I'll give folks just a couple of seconds to do that. Following today's webinar, attendees will be sent a certificate of attendance. This certificate is sent approximately 1 hour following the conclusion of the event and is sent via an Adobe Connect thank you email. Please keep an eye on your email for your certificate. Please note that only individuals who are virtually signed in to today's webinar will receive a certificate. At the conclusion of today's webinar, you will be provided with a link to a brief survey about today's presentation. The feedback you provide is used to assist in future planning and training. I will now turn it over to Elizabeth Tao for today's webinar.
Hello and welcome to the second webinar in our summer series. I'm Elizabeth Tao, and I am the Program Manager for the SHIFT program. I wanted to give you guys a brief background on our program. The Innocent Justice Foundation started in 2009 at the urging of the Internet Crimes Against Children Commanders, the ICAC group. They found that many of their criminal justice professionals were leaving their jobs due to the extreme amount of stress and vicarious trauma associated with their jobs, and they were needing a way to make sure that really good people stay in the job that they're doing a really good job at. So we were tasked to develop a program that presented information to mitigate the stress and trauma and really normalize asking for assistance with mental health and wellness. So today we actually travel throughout the United States and provide either no or low-cost training to criminal justice professionals that focus on child exploitation casework, and that is what you guys are seeing currently as the SHIFT program, the Supporting Heroes in Mental Health Foundational Training. So we take this training all over. We take requests for training. Our calendar is actually pretty full. We're actually starting to plan into 2020. But if anybody has any questions about our program or any of the material that we have, we're always happy to visit with you. And if you want more information about our services or trainings, you can get in touch with us. My information will be actually available at the end of the training, so please reach out to me and I will be happy to help you guys. And now I actually want to turn this webinar over to Anthony and Carol, and they will introduce themselves and share their knowledge on happiness from the inside out. And I will join everybody on the end and help answer questions and visit with everybody then. Thanks so much.
Hi, my name is Carol Brusca, and I'm the Embedded MHP Mental Health Professional for the New Mexico ICAC underneath Anthony Mays. I've been working with SHIFT and the Innocent Justice Program for several years, and I love that I'm able to support law enforcement and those that support children that are experiencing child exploitation. So I'm excited to be here today to talk about happiness and how we can increase our happiness, which will increase our resilience and well-being. And I'm going to turn it over to Anthony now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Mays. I'm the commander for the New Mexico ICAC Task Force. ICAC stands for Internet Crimes Against Children, for those of you that don't work those types of cases. I also oversee human trafficking. Been in law enforcement for over 30 years and became part of this program about, been close to 8-9 years now. Excited that we can share some great information with you today that I've been able to implement in my state. Thanks to Carol, we've had a very successful, healthy task force, both on the ICAC and human trafficking side. So again, you're going to walk away with some amazing tools today.
So the objectives today that we're going to try to cover will be to help people understand the science of happiness. So it's not just what happiness is, but what the science is behind it, why we feel happy and why, how we can increase that. And then we're going to review the importance of support and the use of support with respect to resilience. So when throughout the presentation, we're going to talk about how important it is to have support and how that will help strengthen your own resilience when you're going through a difficult time. And we're going to discuss how to reconnect to the activities that you used to enjoy to help bring that resilience and that happiness forward. And then also discuss how you can incorporate these things with your loved ones, and so that it can be not just a you activity, but it can be a whole family activity that will increase the resilience of not only yourself, but your resilience as a family member and your resilience of the family. So here we go.
I think it's about the webinars.
So what we just wanted to review right now is the summer webinar series. Anthony and I, this is the second of 3 webinars that we're doing. Last month we did a webinar on how was your day, and that will be available, that should be available already if anyone was not able to attend and they would like to take a look at that webinar. In that webinar, we talked about why so many people struggle with talking to their family members, and we gave suggestions on how to approach sharing your experiences without traumatizing others. So we find that people who work in intense situations feel like they want to connect with their family members when they go home, but they don't know how to say that without worrying about traumatizing them as well. And then the webinar today is Happiness from the Inside Out, where we're going to talk about happiness and the importance of having activities outside work and how you can have your family be an important part of this. And then lastly, next month we're going to be discussing creating a family wellness plan and a mission statement. We recognize that these tools are really great when you want to build that foundation of where your family's going, what's important, and how you can increase the resilience. So let's get started. So the science of happiness. When we're talking about the science of happiness, it's what is it in our brains that makes us feel happiness. And there's a chemical in our brain called serotonin, and serotonin is the chemical that our brain releases that makes us feel good. So sometimes we might experience this when we get a hug from somebody. We might experience this when we get some great news. We might experience this when we're having a fabulous day. Then during those times when something great happens, we have serotonin released. And it's called the happiness chemical because that's what it does. It makes us feel good, and it's linked to mood levels. So people who are diagnosed with depression oftentimes have low levels of serotonin. So their body does not produce the serotonin level that other people might produce. That's one of the reasons when someone goes on an antidepressant, that's something that's going to help the serotonin be created so they can feel better. People with high serotonin levels often report being happier. So you might think for a moment in your own life, do you have a tendency to feel happy more of the time or a little bit less happy? And it could be an indicator of your brain's ability to release the serotonin chemicals in your own body. And dopamine is another chemical that's released by your brain, and it affects happiness as well. So when we're being able to focus, when we're able to concentrate, the dopamine is released, and that's what helps us to be able to do those things. So even when you can do a small task, your dopamine levels will increase. So the hope is that throughout the day, when you're going about your business, at work, at home, wherever you are, that you're going to have little tasks that you can complete or little goals that you can achieve. And each time you do that, you have a bump in your dopamine, and that dopamine release is going to make you feel a little bit better. So dopamine happiness feels invigorating and energizing. So when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling great, it's like you want to get out there and tackle the day, more than likely you've had a dopamine release, and that's helping you to do that. So sometimes when we get something really great happens and we've had a wonderful day at work and we're getting ready to leave, and then we notice how energized we feel even though it was a long day, that can be a dopamine release related to the successes that we had that day. So dopamine and serotonin happiness are relatively balanced in those. If you're making sure that you're eating a nutritious diet, getting plenty of exercise, managing your stress, all of those things are so important, and even little changes can affect that. So if you're eating fast food all the time that's not as nutritious as maybe some fresh salads or some fresh fruits, you might want to just try to change that. So maybe instead of grabbing fast food maybe once a week or so, you grab a salad. Maybe if you're not getting exercise, try to get a walk every time at lunch. And managing your stress levels by paying attention to how stressed you are and paying attention to what you can do to decrease your stress. So throughout the day, check in with yourself and say, how am I feeling right now? Am I feeling pretty calm? Am I feeling stressed? Did I do something really great that just gave me a dopamine serotonin kick? Paying attention is one of the most important things you can do, because as you do that, then you will be more aware of what's going on in your body and brain, and then you'll be able to manage it. So if you notice that you went for a nice walk at lunch and then you're feeling invigorated and excited, then maybe that walk helps you to get some dopamine going, and then you know, well, walking equals a dopamine surge, so let's try to walk more often. You can increase the levels of neurotransmitters that affect happiness by doing things that make you feel good. So whatever it is that makes you feel good, if at lunchtime you listen to some music and then suddenly you're feeling great, then that's another thing you can use. All of these are tools that you can incorporate yourself into your own life, and you can be in charge of how that happens.
Yeah, I think with some of the simple things that I've tried myself is throughout the day is definitely, especially after lunch, and if I have maybe a little more carbs than I usually would have, I can definitely feel it kicking in within an hour after lunch. So it makes it important to actually get up, walk around. Some of the things that I've done with my team is actually they have standing desks, and they have the option of after lunch they can move it to the standing position, so the rest of the afternoon they can stand at their desk and they can walk in place. But I strongly recommend to definitely go out and get some exercise, even if it's only 5 minutes, just getting the blood moving through, especially after a heavy carb meal.
So there are some simple skills that you can incorporate right away. Noticing the good things around you. So this is another way to kind of increase that the dopamine, serotonin, because when we notice the good things around us, it's going to increase our happiness. So let's say that you get up in the morning and you take a walk before you go into work. If you can notice that the grass is green, that the birds are singing, that people out walking seem to be happy, that you can really pay attention to the positive things going around you, then that will help to increase your happiness. The habit of being thankful is another great way to increase your happiness. There's research that shows the more thankful a person is and the more grateful they are, the happier they are. So it's kind of this thing of if you put all your attention into looking for things that you're thankful for, then you won't be putting into things, your efforts and attention into things that make you feel sad or that make you feel unhappy. So it's shifting that perspective from thinking in terms of lack, thinking in terms of the things that you don't have, and then shifting that to the things that you can be grateful for and thankful for. And then the habit of creating meaning. So that's what that means is, can you look at a situation and create some meaning from that? So can you understand maybe why that happened and how that's important in your life and how you can learn from that? So sometimes we have a day that's not going so great, but at the end of that day, we can say, I know my day wasn't that great, but because of that day, the events that happened during that day, I was able to learn something new that will help me in the future, or I was able to impact somebody in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to. So it's looking at the things that don't go well in our life and trying to kind of understand the positive side of that. And then get into the habit of giving. This is another well-researched topic that can increase our happiness. So by giving, it's going to give us a bump in oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, and it's going to make us feel better, and it's going to make the person that we're giving to feel better, and that's going to increase the habit of wanting to do that again. And lastly, the habit of empathy. So if we have the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to try to look at things through their perspective, that's going to help, because then we can understand where they're coming from, and that will make them be more willing to talk with us, and that again will build on each other and feed off of each other, so that we will feel better because we're being empathic, and they will feel better because they're being heard.
Yeah, and looking at the list of the attendees, I think that all 5 of these bullet points we all hit every day. I mean, we all have, of course, those days where we feel like not everything went right, but if we look at the true meaning behind our accomplishments of that day and look at the root and what started, I think you'll find that you can find positive happiness in everything that we do every day.
So here's some more skills that we don't often talk about, and they're ways to increase your happiness. So we want to be doing some things in a positive way, like being more grateful, being more thankful, being more empathic, but then we also want to stop doing things that are not productive for our happiness. So these things include perfectionism. If we are holding ourselves to a standard of perfectionism in every area of our life, that's going to be something that's going to bring us down, and it's going to make us less happy. The chances of perfection in every area of our life are very slim, and for having a day that's just a perfect day all around, that's also going to be very slim. So try to find the perfection in the little things, but don't hold yourself to a standard of it's perfectionism or failure. And social comparison is something that I think has increased exponentially since we got social media, things like Facebook and Twitter and all of the other options that we have for social media, because now we have a tendency to compare ourselves to others. So we see somebody went on a great vacation and we know we didn't go on that vacation. All of that social comparison is going to decrease our happiness. So we need to accept that whatever those other people are doing, they also have things going on in their life that make their life not as perfect either. And we can just do the best that we can with each day and accept that as good enough. So good enough is just fine. Worrying about materialism is another thing that's not useful for us when we're trying to increase our happiness, because if we're focused on materialism, we're losing out on the importance of relationship, which is the key to happiness. If we're so focused on striving for bringing in more money or bringing in more things, and that takes us away from spending time with our family, our friends, those that we love, that's going to decrease our happiness because we're not getting that social support from those we love, and we're feeling like we're striving on this treadmill to get somewhere when we're not getting anywhere. And then maximizing. That's maximizing. When we're talking about that, we're really talking about trying to do everything. So, instead of just being satisfied with going on vacation and spending some time with family, it's got to be we're on vacation and we have to see every single thing that's available to us during that time. We have to try every activity. We have to cram in everything we can. Maximizing is not going to help increase our happiness. It's getting things back to the basics, being very mindful of each and everything you do, and then recognizing that if you can be in the moment with those you love, that's going to increase your happiness.
Real quick, we're seeing some of the comments that it sounds like it's not coming through clearly. Is everyone hearing us okay? So I wanted to touch a little bit on this slide. It's interesting because actually, and we see this quite frequently with our children. Thank you for responding. I've seen lots of yeses. Great. Yeah, I was actually talking to my 13-year-old about this the other day because, and it's what Carol's correct, is with social media, I mean, that's the exposure that we're all getting. I mean, we see everything on social media, various platforms. So whatever we frequent on, or if it's Facebook or something like that, our children are on Instagram or any of those other sites, it's there's a lot of social comparison. And the materialism does, and our children see it at such a young age, and they're exposed to that. And unfortunately, it's transferring over to the young adults and myself, seeing that over and over again. So it's important we recognize that to be happy for what we already have in place, as Carol stated.
So how does happiness impact resilience? So when we're talking about resilience, we're talking about the ability for people to bounce back. And happiness impacts resilience by giving us that cushion. So the more happiness we can have in our life, the more cushion we have for resilience. So when we think about, if we look at this graph on the screen right now, it shows us that there's ups and downs in our life, and we all know that. But if we have more happiness in our life, there's kind of a bumper on either side, on the top and the bottom, to help us maintain without going over the edge on either side. So it's going to increase our window of tolerance and allow us to be able to bounce back and feel more comfortable even during the difficult times. We know that overall, if we're feeling about a 10 or we're feeling about a 7 for the most part, then on those days or on those moments when we have a 3, we have the ability to understand that for the most part our life is a 7, and when we hit a 3, we're going to be okay because we know we've got the ability to bounce back. So it's this constant checking in with ourselves to see how we're doing and how we're feeling, and then making sure that if we're noticing that we're feeling low or we're feeling like we don't have a lot of ability to manage our stress, that we start using all of our skills to increase that window of resilience. Having a wide window of tolerance will increase our resilience, and then putting happiness on board will kind of give us some insulation against the inability to tolerate situations. So what is resilience? I chose this quote because it really seemed to me that it just fits exactly what resilience is. And I'm sure you can see it, but my scars remind me that I did indeed survive my deepest wounds. That in itself is an accomplishment. And they bring to mind something else, too. They remind me that the damage life has inflicted on me has, in many places, left me stronger and more resilient. What hurt me in the past has actually made me better equipped to face the present. So this is a great understanding in my mind of what resilience is. It's knowing that we are all going to experience some times when it feels like nothing can get any worse. And when we get to the point where we feel that, and then the next day or the next month we notice things are getting better, that is our ability to bounce back. That is resilience. So each time we're able to come through a difficult time and survive that, then we have that in our brain that we have the ability and the skill to come back from a difficult time. And those wounds make us stronger. Those wounds help us to become more resilient and even stronger than we have been in the past. So we need to recognize the lies we tell ourselves. And this is something that's important. It's like when we were talking on that previous slide about the things that don't bring us happiness that we need to get rid of. We tell ourselves lies, and when we believe those lies, they actually make our life more difficult. So when we have the belief that we are in control, that's actually a lie. We have very, very little control in our lives. And I don't say that in a way to make you feel bad. I say that in a way to release you from feeling like you have to be in charge every moment of every day. There are minimal things that you can control. You can control your responses and your reactions to things, to other people, but other than that, you can't control other people. You can't control the situations that necessarily that you're in. You can't control what your boss does. You can't control what your family members do, but you can choose to control how you respond and how you react to that. And that's the area that you have control over. You have control over making decisions that are healthy for you. You have control over what you do in your life, but with respect to other people and other events, that's out of your control. And when you're able to let that go and just recognize that you have to do what you can in your own life, and that's the extent of what you can do, that's going to release you from feeling like everything is your responsibility and you're in control. And the second lie that we tell ourselves is that I can do this on my own. Resilience is based on the fact that social support is what's going to get us that resilience. So trying to do things on our own sometimes might be necessary or sometimes might be beneficial, but overall, we need to have that social support. Humans are social beings, and we rely on having connection with others. That's what makes us stronger. That's what makes us feel happy. That's what's going to give us that strength to carry on. And if I ignore it, it will go away. This then can suddenly explode into something much, much worse because it never goes away when we ignore something. So I know many people that do this with respect to going to the doctors. They notice there's a symptom and they just think, I don't want to deal with it, I ignore it, and it will go away. And instead it becomes a much bigger problem. So try to be proactive as much as possible, and if not being proactive, then at least the minute you notice something is off, then address it. That's in any area of our life. If it's a relationship issue with a family member, a communication issue with a coworker, a medical issue that we might be having, maybe our finances are getting out of whack and we just don't want to open the bills anymore, addressing it head on as soon as possible will help decrease that stress. It will help you be able to come up with a plan, and it's a perfect time then to reach out to those supports and ask somebody else. When we're able to have a partner, whether that's a coworker, someone that we hire to help us out, whether that's a family member, when we're able to have a partner when we've got a problem, that's going to help decrease our feelings of concern around that problem. And lastly, we need to stop telling ourselves the lie that emotion is a weakness. Emotion is something that we all experience, and sometimes we're not very pleased with the emotions that we experience, but they are not a weakness. They're a sign that we're human. It's telling us that we have the ability to feel. It's telling us that we have the ability to have empathy and concern for others. It's telling us that we experience pain and suffering and sadness and happiness and all of those things, and that's just what makes us human.
So I think with many of us in the professions that we're in, and if you're attending this webinar, there's a good chance you are in a profession where you're working with victims. And many times we fall under this. and I've seen this firsthand with my team. Being in law enforcement 30 years, I've had some of my agents come in and had tears in their eyes after a difficult case, and they felt like almost embarrassed to have those emotions in front of me, and I've always reassured them that that's normal, it's normal human behavior, and it's not a weakness, and they're not soft in any way, and that's part of the empathy, and I expect that. And when I work with my people directly, I want them to feel that way. I want them to understand that they're not going to be in complete control, and that sometimes they're going to have to reach out for help. Today, we actually have a case that we've been working on for a number of days, and it's a difficult case for one of my agents. It does involve probably the worst we could experience in the types of cases we investigate, and I can see it in her face. And what I've done now is letting her know that we're there for her, that she's not on her own, and it's important we understand that we reach out to others and look for that as support. Because we get into this field because we're in this field to help others, and sometimes we forget to ask for help ourselves.
So, like I've said multiple times, that social support is a very important part of resilience. This comes from the APA website. That's the American Psychiatric Association website, and it says that the presence and use of social support, the ability to plan and take action, positive assessment, communication and problem-solving skills, and the ability to tolerate feelings, all of those together are what's going to help us be resilient. So what that means is we need to have social support and use it. That means family members, friends, coworkers, others in the community, maybe they're acquaintances that we feel a connection to. Having all of those people around that we can turn to during dark times, that's going to help us with our resilience. Having the ability to plan and take action. So if we know something is going on and we can set a plan for that and say, this is how I'm going to hit this head on, and this is what I'm going to do, and these are the steps I'm going to take, that's going to help us build our resilience. If we have a positive assessment of ourselves, so that means if I feel like I know this is going to be difficult and it might not be easy for me to do this, but I feel like I have the skills and tools I need. That's going to help build our resilience. And then communication and problem-solving skills are important because that allows us to have the ability to talk to others about what's going on and then have the skills to sort through what the answers are to the problem. And lastly, the tolerance and management of strong feelings, meaning we know that sometimes things will get ugly, but we know that we can handle that. So we know that even in the worst of our days so far, we've survived. And so knowing that and having that ability to think about that will help us to be able to tolerate things when things are rough, and then allows us the ability to work through that. And so resilience doesn't mean that you don't have stress or difficulties in life. Resilience does not have anything to do with that. Resilience just means that when we do have stress or difficulties in life, we can manage that and work through it and come out the other side. It means that you have the skills to manage the stress. So again, a good deal of that is paying attention to what's going on. If you wake up and you notice you're feeling off that day, then what do you need to do to fix that to get back on track? If you notice that that maybe your stress is high and you notice where you're feeling that in your body, then you can pay attention to what do I need to do? Do I need to make sure that I'm eating healthy today? Do I need to get some more rest? Do I need to reach out to my supports? Do I need to make sure that I get some extra exercise? So in your toolbox of resilience skills, take a look and see what will work for you in that situation. And it also means that you believe that things will and do get better. So we have all been through difficult times. We've all survived those times, maybe a little bit battle-worn, but we have survived. So knowing that and recognizing that this too will pass is going to be great for your resilience. So how do you build your resilience? Holding the positive view of yourself and your abilities. So knowing that if it's a difficult time and a problem arises, then you can figure out what to do. So if, for instance, you're behind on your bills or something because there's a lot of economic stress on you, you had some unexpected issues that came up and now you're struggling with that. If you can say, I know this is difficult, but I have a plan, and that plan is to tackle each bill individually, one at a time, and I'm going to call the creditors, and I'm going to work with my family and friends to see how they can support me. Having that positive view of yourself and your abilities will build your resilience. The ability to plan and take and stick with them, so that's going to be, again, I'm going to make those phone calls, I'm going to set out a plan, I know how I'm going to make this change. That's going to give you the strength to work through that. And then having the feeling that you have some control over your life. So maybe it feels like right now that many of the things in your life are out of control. Having one area where you feel like things are in control is going to be something that will help pull you through. So maybe you're not able to manage parts of your work life right now, so things are very stressful at work, and maybe there's some struggles in your relationship, but you know that the things you can control are taking care of yourself and doing self-care things like eating well, exercising, and sleeping. And if that's the only thing that you have control over, then that's where you can put that focus. Another way to build resilience is to make sure that you can communicate with others. So when things are difficult, you've got to step up and say to those that you love, I'm having a struggle right now. Let's talk this out, or can you help me, or can I rely on you? And if you see yourself as a fighter rather than a victim, so when a difficult situation comes up and you can say, I know that even though this is hard, I'm not going to see myself as a victim and roll over and not put in effort. I'm going to do everything I can to fight to make this situation better. And having a high emotional intelligence and managing emotions effectively, that means recognizing what your own emotions are and the emotions of other people and how you can manage those. So if you notice that you're feeling highly emotional, and you know that's going to impact others, then what can you do to control your emotions when things are difficult?
So I'd like to comment a little bit on the communication. That's very important. What we have found, Carol and I have talked to members of our team here in New Mexico and around the country, and family communication is important. So if you have a rough day, communicating that with your family, your significant other, your children, sharing with them, and not necessarily in details. I mean, some of the things that we deal with on a daily basis, we don't want to expose our loved ones to. However, it's important to communicate that you're having a bad day for a reason and get that support from your family.
And that was a great segue, Anthony. So how does this benefit you and your family? It will allow you the ability as a team, as a unit, to survive the difficult times. So if there's a problem going on in your life or possibly your loved one's life, and if you know that you've got somebody else to rely on and that you're a united front that's going to tackle this problem together, it's going to help you to survive that difficult time. We all know that there's times in our life when we have an issue or our family members have an issue and it might seem insurmountable, but if you have just one more person by your side, that can help you be able to tolerate that uncomfortability. You want to strengthen the bonds within the family, and that's going to happen if you have that resilience. So when you know that somebody's got your back and somebody knows that you've got their back, that's going to help strengthen that bond, and it's going to make you feel like you aren't alone. And when you have that feeling, that's going to increase your family resilience. This is going to set a good example for your children in your home. So if the children in your home see that you and your spouse or you as a family are united and can take care of each other and be there when others are struggling, that's going to be an example that your children can use when they grow up. And it's also going to increase your communication because we can't get through these difficult times successfully without communicating with others and with our loved ones that something is going on and we need to come up with a plan. So what is self-care? I talked briefly about self-care a few minutes ago. Self-care is what people do for themselves to establish and maintain health. So self-care is something that's very, very individualized. Right on this slide, we've got some things that include things you can do for self-care, like general and personal hygiene, watching your nutrition, having activities that are helpful for you, your living conditions, your social habits. All of those things increase our self-care, but basically it's making sure that you are taking care of yourself and your needs when the time comes that you need to increase your strength. So it's the things that we do to increase our internal emotional strength. So some personal self-care strategies can include things like, for me, myself, I make sure that I get a massage once a month. I make sure that I get acupuncture. I make sure I exercise every day. I try my best to surround myself with positive people. I try to have a gratitude journal. All of those things are self-care strategies that I use. And you all probably can think of things in your own life that you use for self-care.
No, I have found the same thing with me. One of the things that I try to do is at least 4 days a week I go to the gym, and that helps quite a bit, actually. Gives me time with my 19-year-old as well. I've incorporated massage back into my routine, so trying to do that at least every other week. I'm actually going to bring back acupuncture because those are all great self-care strategies. Also talking to your colleagues, talking to your family. Again, communication is vital, and not necessarily about work, something unrelated to work, maybe your hobby.
So we're going to talk a little bit about a Usta. A Usta is something that you did in the past that you used to do. So it could be something that was a hobby you had when you were much younger, as a child, as a teenager, before you had family and children, or it could be something that you did that you have wanted to try, that you had thought about doing and you never really got involved in it. It can be something you and your family did in the past, and it can be an activity that you or your family members did without you. So maybe you used to hike all the time. You used to be a hiker, and now you're not. How can you bring that skill to your family? Or maybe you used to be a bowler, or maybe you used to be a painter. Any of those activities that you can bring into your life, that you can incorporate your family, that's going to be something that's going to help build your resilience. So how can you reconnect with your Usta? As a family, you can all talk about individually about what everybody's Ustas were and how you can each try those together as a family. You can think about why you don't do that anymore. So what was the reason that you stopped doing that hobby or habit that you had? Why did you stop painting? Why did you stop hiking? And then figure out how you can get that reincorporated into your life. And then lastly, decide on a family activity based on the Usta. So it could be that you and your family members decide that once a month you're going to try somebody's Usta, and that can bring you all together, and it can reconnect you with those things that made you happy in the past. And then the second thing to think about is, what is it I want when I retire? So if you think about who you will be, once you stop doing the job that you're doing, you might find that your identity is no longer of that individual. So maybe when I retire and I'm no longer a therapist, I will not be able to say, yes, I'm Carol the therapist. I'm going to say, Carol the person who used to be the therapist. But it's important that I have other identities so that I don't feel such a loss when I'm no longer working in the field. So for me, I'm a baker, I'm a mom, I'm a walker, I'm all sorts of things. And so for me, when I want to think about retirement, I want to think about who is it that I am outside of my work.
So for me, I don't think I'll ever retire because I have a 13-year-old, so it's going to be a while. So part of it is being a dad, of course, and then being in the position that I'm in. That's a big part of our life because I'm very involved with my children and their classes and those kind of things as well. But it's important to have that outlook, and what will I do someday when I retire?
You need to have that thought in mind now so that you will have it in place when the time comes. If you don't think about it until the day you retire, then there's going to be a big vacuum and a big loss when you don't have your work identity anymore, and that can lead to depression. So how do you incorporate when I retire activities? Like it says here, sit down with the family and think about if we didn't have to go to work, or didn't have to go to school, what would we as a family be doing every day? And then talk about how you can start doing those things now. So what are the activities that everybody thinks would be fun? So maybe for you it's golfing, for maybe somebody else it's painting, somebody else it's something else, but you can all agree that camping is something that you'd like to do. So increase that activity. When I retire, I want to be a camper 6 months out of the year. How can you start to incorporate that now? It could be that some of your when I retire activities, you can try them out and realize maybe that's not what you want to do when you retire. So during your pre-retirement, practice those things that you think you would like to do to see if you really would like to do them. How the Usta and the when I retire activities can benefit your family? This can happen because you're going to be able to decrease the stress as everyone is involved in a group activity, and that's going to increase your social support. You're going to build family resilience. It's going to be an opportunity for problem solving. So then part of that problem solving is, let's say if your Usta or your activity, when your retire activity is camping, the whole family can sit down and problem solve. What do we need to take camping? Where are we going to go camping? How long will we be gone? So it brings you together as a family. It helps to increase your communication skills. It gives you a chance to collaborate and allows all of the individuals the opportunity to lead throughout the process. So maybe the youngest child in the family gets to decide what you'll have for breakfast on the camping trip, and the oldest child gets to choose a location. But having everybody be part of that is something that's going to increase your resilience and your happiness. So right now we're at a place where we're willing to take questions if anybody has any questions for us, and thank you for listening to our presentation. So I see a question here. Go ahead.
Thanks, you guys. So we are going to take some questions now. We do have one, and it came in pretty early into the conversation, so we may have answered some of it. The question is, what recommendations do you have for dealing with regaining happiness while handling possible traumatic stress?
So one of the ways to get through traumatic stress is to increase your happiness. So sometimes in the beginning it feels like you're going through the motions and you're not getting the benefit, but the more you go through those motions, the better you will feel. Certainly if you're experiencing extreme traumatic stress, you want to be dealing with that probably through therapy or through maybe some medication for depression or medication for anxiety, but you can certainly work on your traumatic stress while at the same time increasing your happiness. Using your social supports, spending time with your family, all of those things that make you feel positive about yourself, while at the same time working on that traumatic stress, whether that's through some medication for anxiety or depression, whether that's counseling, whether that's a different type of therapy. You can certainly do both of those at the same time.
Okay, perfect. It looks like some other people are typing in, but we don't have a question immediately. I'm going to go ahead and forward that slide. So we did have some questions for your guys' contact information. So as everybody can see, you can have Anthony and Carol's email directly on your screen now in the PowerPoint presentation. I did add my contact information into the chat window. My email is elizabeth@innocentjustice.org, so you can also get in touch with me that way. We'll give it a few more minutes just to see if anybody else has any questions. So this one just looks like came in, and I think it's a great question. We actually talk about this often. And when you retire early due to disability, and how do you find the happiness afterwards? Christine, I think I said that right. You can correct me if I didn't. But maybe Anthony and Carol, could you guys take a whack at that?
Sure. I can say a few things, and maybe Anthony has a perspective because he might being in law enforcement, he might know individuals that have had to retire early due to disabilities. So one of the things that it probably happens in the beginning is that there's this loss of identity because you had a particular idea of who you were, and then when you can no longer be that individual, it's going to impact your happiness right away. And so then it's a matter of letting go of some of the perfection, letting go of some of the ideas of who we are and how we define ourselves, and then finding that new identity, because we can't be something that we are no longer have the ability to be. So if we had a disability that came about related to our work, and it's unfortunate, but it's a fact. So it's something that we have to figure out how to manage, and it's something that with a little bit of effort and changing of focus and support from others, we can have that opportunity.
So what I have found, I actually was able to get a grant, and I was able to bring someone onto my team that has a disability, but they wanted to remain in this field, and I started developing them in forensics and some other areas, and they love that. So it's still being part of the mission, but taking a different direction, and it's been very successful. And I have seen this throughout my career. A lot of folks return after retiring and come back to the field. I'm one of those folks, actually. I retired, and I lasted in the private sector for a short time, and then I came right back into law enforcement. It's difficult to walk away. So just finding different ways to fulfill that and making a difference if it's something you want to continue doing.
Okay, thank you. A question, does SHIFT have dedicated counselors to assist with officers within the department so they don't have to go through their EAP? That's a question that we get often, and we don't have specific counselors within our group. However, that being said, we do have the ability to help you find a counselor that's outside of your EAP. Carol, who's one of our mental health professionals, of course, and then a couple of our other people are also available if you have some immediate questions. So get in touch with me, and we can kind of help you navigate that maze, because it is a challenge to know who to visit with. We also have we also have some information on our website, sorry about that, that kind of gives you some information on questions to ask when you're looking for a mental health professional. We have some guides, so you can find that on our website as well. Also, in offering these trainings to law enforcement CERT teams for officer wellness, we do offer these trainings to all law enforcement. You can give me an email, and I'm happy to visit with you about that. Again, my email is elizabeth@innocentjustice.org. And then it looks like one more quick question for you and Anthony, and we'll probably close it with this. And they are asking, how do you address kind of a constant stress for law enforcement who are dealing with the aftermath of events such as the Paradise Fire last year, or big events that really change the way that everybody looks at things on a continuous basis?
So I can go first, and then I'll let Anthony follow up. Certainly with any event that could cause some trauma or post-traumatic stress, I would recommend reaching out to a mental health professional, just so you have someone who's able to hold a space for you and allow you to talk freely about what's going on. So you want to be able to put those things in perspective with someone who can help you do that. And that's not going to be probably an easy process, but the sooner you can get in to start working through that, the better it will be for you, because then you don't have to feel the burden of carrying that by yourself. So I would say reach out to some therapist, a counselor, crisis intervention person, just so that you have that support immediately, and then you can see what long-term steps that you need to take.
I agree. So if you're experiencing, this law enforcement person is experiencing stress from this type of event, and we all experience, we have events in our profession that they're going to affect all of us. It's important to talk to other folks that are a part of that event, that they're going to be feeling the same thing you are. And then what I've done, and Carol's correct, bringing a therapist in to work with the team so you can work together. And then once that therapist steps out, you can rely on each other and bounce things off of each other and support each other.
And please know that if you have experienced a really traumatic event or a cataclysmic event and you're feeling bad, that's absolutely normal.
Yeah.
It's normal to feel sad. It's normal to feel depressed. It's normal to feel angry. Anything you're feeling is normal. What you want to be concerned about is if it goes on for a long period of time or you just can't seem to get out of those initial feelings that you had. So recognizing that it's going to be a wave of emotion over a long period of time if it was a very cataclysmic event, and understanding that with support you can get through this.
Correct.
Great. Thank you guys so much, Carol and Anthony. I appreciate all your insight. That last answer, I appreciate what you said, Carol and Anthony, so much, that it is normal. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to William to close out the webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Yes,
thank you.
And thank you, Yes, thank you, and thank you, everyone. It's our pleasure for bringing such important information to our audience. For everyone, I'm just going to wrap us up with just a couple of quick reminders and announcements before we adjourn. Please join us for the next webinar of SHIFT's webinar series, Creating a Family Wellness Plan and Mission Statement. This webinar will be held on August 20th from 3:30 to 4:30 at our normal standard time. The link on your screen is indeed live, so you can feel free to click on it, and you can register for the webinar right now. Also, note that you can register for the webinar to the link and in the PowerPoint slides as well that you download. And you can contact NTTAC through the website displayed on this slide. You can stay up to date on the latest information by signing up for our TTA listserv as well. Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook at OJJDP TTA. You may contact OJJDP via the Help Desk by following the contact information on this slide. Do you have a training or technical assistance need? If so, please visit OJJDP's TTA 360 platform to submit a request for help. And as a reminder, the webinar recording, PowerPoint slides, and presented bios and transcripts will be available for folks if you're interested. The video for today's webinar is indeed located on NTTAC's YouTube channel. And if you like the transcripts and supporting materials, PowerPoint, etc., you can contact OJJDP TTA Help Desk at OJJDP@USDOJ.gov. Please take a moment to review this slide. And lastly, we would appreciate it if you could take about 5 minutes to complete the feedback survey. Thank you all again for joining us today. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye.